who's convinced of it. He's a billionaire. They usually are, aren't they? He's a billionaire, and that means he's got the money to go to all of these extraordinary lengths to convince people that he is stopping the aging process, let alone slowing it down. He does all sorts of things. Here's a little bit of Brian Johnson talking about it.
It may not be the case that we can assume inevitable death anymore. And I'm saying that right now it is a reasonable thing for, not crazy, reasonable thing for one to say right now. Death may not be inevitable.
Right. Okay. Well, who am I to question him? Instead, I'll go to a professor, Luigi Fontana, Scientific Director of Sydney University's Charles Perkins Centre, RPA Clinic, and he joins me now. Professor, thank you very much for your time.
Hello. Hi. Good morning.
Well, come on. What do you think of Brian Johnson?
Well, it's what he says. It's for now is untrue. We know, and I've been working for 20 years in US at Washington University, and now in Europe, and now in Sydney, and I've been doing this for all my life. We have interventions that can slow aging, and we have lots of data. We can increase lifespan and health span, meaning living healthy life, because nobody wants to live a long life, with dementia, a stroke, or whatever, cancer. So the data are solid. There are no data whatsoever in humans or in animals showing that, we can stop or reverse aging. So what he says is totally unscientific, supported today. Okay.
Is anything motivating him, mate? Because, he does go to certain lengths. He has blood transfusions. He's had bone marrow and so on. There's a lot more that he does as well. He tests everything. He measures everything about his body.
Yeah.
Is there anything that he's saying at the moment that would prove you wrong in terms of data he's producing?
Well, I don't know his data. I'm publishing Science, Nature, the top scientific journal. He doesn't publish any.
He doesn't release any of it.
Then basically is in n equal 1. In science, you have to do a randomized clinical trial with many people in each group, to prove that an intervention is doing something. So basically, is what we call anecdotal. There are people saying, I went to Lourdes, I had the water, and now I don't have cancer. There are all sorts of people, come up with their own anecdotal evidence. I cannot, even comment on statements like his. But, some of the things he does, like a healthy, mostly pesco-vegetarian diet, exercising, mindfulness, stuff like that, there is plenty of support, and that's part of my science. I've been studying calorie restriction without malnutrition, fasting, and intervention for the last 30 years. So the evidence there is solid. In terms of all the other stuff he does that only partially I know, like, the blood transfusion, there are no studies in humans. There are very interesting data in animals. It's called parabiosis. If you link the bloodstream of a young and old animal and then you cause damage, for example, in the brain or muscle of the old animal, the stem cells within the muscle or brain of the old animal are able to regenerate.
Right.
Because what we are finding is that there are some factors in the blood that are blocking the stem cells to regenerate as we get older. But there are no data in humans. So he does experiments without having any data on the safety even of transfusing blood. We don't know what happens. If you have a medical condition where a surgery where you need transfusion, it's fine. But then, to transfuse blood from someone just for longevity without having solid data is a bit risky, but he can do whatever he wants.
Well, you think it would be in his interests to put some of this stuff to the test. Is there anything else that would motivate him? He's a wealthy person. I don't know whether there could be a possibility that money is motivating him here, but it just seems to be an obsession that he has.
I cannot comment. I don't know if it's just, an obsession on health, or maybe I know he has a company and now he's selling products. So I have no idea. Look, I don't know him. I'm a scientist. I'm a doctor. we have some of the best science at the Charles Perkins Center, RPA Clinic. We have some of the best science in the world on longevity. We have, some of the best techniques, to measure gene and metagenomic, epigenetics, and, a lot of cardiovascular and other testings, that are really measuring longevity. And we do that following scientific protocols and not just, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. If you go on internet, there are plenty of people claiming that, they have the secret of longevity.
So they talk about, and you probably talk about as well, that we seem to be living longer and into an older age. Is that evolution, or is that because, we have better medicines, better health? What do you say?
Well, right now, there is no doubt that life expectancy has doubled. We went from 45 years of life expectancy, medium life expectancy in 1850 to 80 years for men and 84 for women on average in Australia. And there is a huge difference between, let's say, wealthy neighborhoods where, the gap with less affluent, it's like 15, 20 years. So people in less affluent neighborhoods, they live 15, 20 years less. So there is no doubt that, the advancement in medicine, public health medicine, antibiotic vaccinations, cortisone, insulin, so all these techniques has hugely increased lifespan. But the health span is not as increased. 65% of people older than 65, they have 2 or more chronic disease, and they take on average 7 medications. And because of the epidemic of obesity in children and teenagers, 40% of Australian children, they are overweight or obese. And this is going to have a huge impact on life expectancy and sustainability of healthcare. It's unsustainable as it is.
Last question for you, though. I mean, ice baths, do you plunge yourself into a freezing cold ice bath, and can that have any sort of benefits that you can see in terms of longevity, do you think?
There are no data, there are no scientific data that I'm aware of. But, for example, the opposite, there are some interesting studies from some of my colleagues for Denver University that if you immerse yourself in a hot tub for like 50 minutes, 3 times a week, you have a major reduction in systolic blood pressure. Wow. As you know, as people they get older, they have high blood pressure. It is a risk factor for dementia, stroke, heart attack. And there are publications published in high impact factor journals showing 50 minutes in a hot tub 3 times a week. After 2 months, there is a drop by almost 10 millimeters of mercury of systolic blood pressure.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Yes.
Indeed. Do you know what sort of temperature you'd have to be at?
I think it's 40. If I remember well, it was 39 degrees, and you are immersed, with the shoulders. So basically, only your neck and head are out of the water. So it's immersed, for 50 minutes, and at 40 degrees. That's the results. They did a randomized clinical trial, so very well designed study, and the data are really, really interesting. Yes.
All right. Now, my last question for you is this, because Brian, of course, the billionaire, he takes, they reckon, around 100 supplements a day. It's a massive industry. You well know it. You've only got to go into a supermarket or a pharmacy store, and there's just shelves and shelves and shelves of these things. Is there anything you could recommend out of all of that actually might help you live longer?
Now, look, as a physician, I'm a specialist in internal medicine. We recommend people to take supplements only when there is a medical reason. Because, we measure stuff in blood and, we see there are deficiencies. Otherwise, there are multiple randomized clinical trials, big ones showing that, for example, vitamin C, vitamin E, beta-carotene supplementation doesn't do anything. By the way, there is a huge study published in New England showing that, beta-carotene supplementation in smokers is increasing mortality, not decreasing mortality.
Okay.
And all the other supplements, resveratrol, we publish in Cell Metabolism, other journals, no effects whatsoever. So it was false. Resveratrol is an anti-aging molecule, and people, they are taking it anyway. And for many of these supplements, there are no data in humans supporting a beneficial effect. So people, they are just taking very expensive supplements and they have very costly urine.
Yeah, right.
The results. And by the way, some of these supplements, not all of them, but some of these supplements, we don't know where they're coming from. There are publications in JAMA and other journals showing that, some of these supplements, they are contaminated potentially with heavy metals or other stuff. So we don't know. It's not highly regulated, that market. So we have to be very careful what supplements and where the supplements are coming from. And, there are companies that at least they are checking for heavy metals or other stuff, So there are publications, that are kind of raising the potential that some of these supplements could be even harmful.
All right. Look, thanks very much for going through all that with us. We will watch with interest. I think Brian Johnson is 46 years of age, so we'll keep an eye on him over the next 40 years and see if he's still going. Thanks very much for that, Professor.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good on you.
Thanks.
Professor Luigi Fontana there from Charles Perkins Centre, RPA.